We're here.
Penelope, you're up. You have to do the intro.
Say welcome.
Can you say welcome?
Happy
You're
birthday.
gonna be shy.
No way.
Welcome to another corner conversation. We're talking about Second John.
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
Good second John.
It was. We planned that.
Yeah.
We said.
Today we have Ty with us, and Greg is in. Him and Kelsey are on vacation in California.
Mhm.
And Ty, you wanna pull that door shut? Yeah. Try to get and send a little gift to Greg that there isn't a bunch of conversations in the background.
You love it so much.
But today, just wanted to say,
Don't show that picture. I hate it. Oh, what's happening?
Rachel's almost 50 today.
I am not almost 50, but I am an age.
She's an interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Happy birthday.
Thank
Ty,
you.
birthday as well.
Yeah,
He's an age.
Today?
Yes.
yeah, today.
Oh, that's right. Rachel told me last week.
Yeah,
that we
we're
share
birthday
That's
buddies.
why there's
I forgot.
donuts. It's not just you.
I know. Well, I tried to share.
Kidding.
He just took.
You have them.
I did, I took.
Okay.
It's double.
I had to
birthday
convince
day.
him.
Yeah,
Ty's almost 40.
Getting there
eventually,
eventually.
it'll
It's
happen.
like-
I don't know, I'm not afraid of aging. Rachel thinks it's weird. My wife, Rachel, she thinks it's weird because I will like find a new gray hair somewhere and be excited about it. I don't have a lot, but like I will I know where my gray hairs are. Cause I get excited about it.
I had one in my beard.
I have a few in my beard.
We don't need to talk about these things. I really loved, was it a couple weeks, was it last week when Greg and Rich were telling us about how they were middle-aged and I was
We're in a lot of
uncomfortable.
places, yeah.
Yeah, I was uncomfortable because when I was 35, there was no part of me that wanted to say I was middle-aged. I don't really like it now either, but back then for sure.
Is it like a mental thing? Like, oh, I don't want to be the old person? Is it like, I don't want to die? Is it
don't
means
know.
my kids don't need me anymore?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I don't-
Age?
Yeah, or feeling like I don't feel middle-aged. That doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're a turd. Oh, you probably feel middle-aged because you're almost to the other side, right? Past.
The other side.
It's just
Yeah,
It's trying to push back a little.
pancakes, eggs, and bacon at Perkins are cheaper now.
Oh, boy, that's
Yeah.
exciting.
I was at McDonald's at 4 o'clock this morning. Had
You found your crowd.
17 refills of coffee.
You're good. You found your people.
My peeps.
I like it.
Well, today we are doing a 1 week, we're doing a 1 week series on Second John,
Mhm.
chapter 1.
The only
Oh,
chapter.
that's right.
Second
That's
John,
it.
chapter 1.
You did try to put Second John chapter 2
Yeah, for
on
sure.
it for a few of these.
That's good.
Or First John chapter 1 again,
Yeah.
because I just, I
Let's
can't
just do
write,
it.
I can't write John without putting a 1 before it after
Yeah.
16 weeks of walking through First John.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So this is a little bit of a, like a jolt of instead of spending months, this is
Mhm.
just a day,
Yep.
but. First John was a letter written to a specific part of community that was wandering from the main things of Christ. And Second John is written to another portion of community, but not hey, you guys are in the same spot as that other group. But as an encouragement / warning / encouragement,
Yeah.
reminders to, you're doing a good job. But,
Just hang on.
no, not a but an asterisk on there, they're saying that just an encouragement to keep focus, and there's. I don't know, what is, if somebody comes to you and says, what are the different things you feel in a moment when somebody says, hey, you need to really refocus? Or somebody says you need to keep focus,
Mhm.
is there different processing of those two instructions?
I would just assume you saw something that meant that I already was losing focus.
So even with the keep focus, you would assume it was because you've always.
Yeah, like, why are you telling me this? If you don't have a reason, I'd be like, why are you telling me this? I'd assume
Well,
you have to have a reason. It's not like you're just,
So when you read a text like Second John, is the author yelling at you?
I mean, we were talking about this a little bit last week, like how when I read these, none of them feel warm and fuzzy. They don't feel like he feels very, like, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like
They're
he's
yelling
yelling
at
at
you.
us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
I mean, I definitely can get that, empathize with that, but I think that this would be a letter, a book that it wasn't scoldy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's written
Which is funny,
written to
you're
the dearly.
usually in the opposite, like, you feel, like, we've talked about how you feel like Jesus scolds you more, and I'm like, no, Jesus, like, gives me a hug and tells me it's okay.
Yes, no, he only scolds and yells at me when I need it.
Yeah,
And this is a moment where they don't really need it.
they don't need it
There are plenty of times when it's,
when they do.
yeah,
Yeah,
when I'm like,
by the
I
way.
just got poked in the throat by Jesus.
I don't understand, but okay.
What? Come on,
Uh,
come here, Jesus. Oh.
oh, yeah,
Well, that's it.
that's the whole thing.
That's the whole-
John yells.
I mean, it's, the main things, keeping the main things in First John. And then you get the Second John, and it's to different people, but hey, keep doing this. It's like, and watch out.
Yeah,
I don't think it's scoldy, I think it's warning.
well, the thing that in verses 8, 9. 10 and a little bit there's right in the middle of this text, there's this heavy declaration of persisting, which that is not, again, that's why I feel like this is such a not a scolding book. It's just as an
Yeah.
encouragement to persist, to continue on. And I do think that persisting is always really remarkable to me. I feel like I've had a long time, maybe it's because of my age, an admiration of persistence. And I even think it's like that is something that I ascribe for, is not necessarily that I would be the best or somehow remarkable, other than try again.
There.
And that's really a value to me.
What helps, because I think like that's something I've been thinking about. Like, I think I can be pretty committed, but I think that I also can be committed and still struggle quite a bit. So like that's not persistence, but what, like all of us, what helps you persist when it's hard or when it's, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, what you said is so important. I don't really fully understand the difference between committed and persisting or being persistent. But maybe it's just semantic, but I do think that a huge aspect of being persistent is commitment.
Mhm.
And commitment can come out of lots of different things,
Yeah.
can be healthy or unhealthy. But struggling, failure, not knowing what to do, all these things, I don't think they're not hindrances to being persistent.
No. I think they're like, what I keep thinking of too is like being persistent in tough situations with hope that those tough situations get better. I don't know, like, how do you keep,
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe that's a part of it, but
hope is so complicated, as we even talk about, these, keep focus on Jesus, have hope in Jesus. Jesus looked at his disciples, boy, in this world, you guys are gonna have trouble.
Isn't it
Yeah.
rough?
Yeah, but don't worry, you have a peace, you
yeah,
have hope, it's
you overcome.
in the midst of
Talk about
it.
that, yeah.
And so I don't know, part of being persistent is having hope, is having commitment, but it isn't necessarily that at some point, well, I'm gonna be able to persist without even trying. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
the goal or the desire.
Mhm.
you know?
I think the trying.
Were you about to Yoda?
Mm.
How did you get in there?
I felt it coming. And you were about to Yoda. I knew it.
This is the weird moment for me that Scott called out something.
Cause I saw you go.
No, I mean, the doing. Oh, man, I hope Greg clips that. But no, the doing, like the doing is the part I think that makes persistence. It's
Mhm.
once you stop doing. Then it just stops.
Yes, but the doing comes out of being, so don't,
Yeah,
it like, actually, I think such a. I
the,
like see people that just really stand out and like it's, you know, and how they love people, how they care,
Mhm.
how they serve or how they're generous. And they can't turn it off.
Yeah,
Like, what in the world? Why is this in you? And really it's because it's a state of being.
yeah, it's a state of being.
Sure. I think we're really quick to attribute, and Greg and I have talked about this a lot recently, this idea of like someone being good at something as just like natural skill, and there's certainly like a level for some people where they're good at things, but an example from like, I'm gonna borrow Greg's examples just because they were good, is that he's known or has become known as like being a good photographer. And some of the photos that he's done are really good, but he wouldn't describe himself as a good photographer, and he feels like it's something he has to work at. But really, too, with that, we talked about it, and as we were getting this ready, talked about yesterday the idea of like there's this scale that they use when it comes to like skill development from like you're not good at something and you don't know that you're not good at something,
Mhm.
to like you know that you're not good at something, to that you know that you're good at something, to that you don't know that you're good at something. And that last like end of it is that really this idea that as you continue, as you persist and develop, that's really how people who you say, oh, look, you're really good at being a host. Like I'm sure to Gary and Noel, I know they put a lot of effort into the things they do, but a lot of that is just like a natural part of who they are,
Mhm.
and they're not putting conscious thought into it.
Mhm.
It's there's conscious effort, but maybe like the I don't think they would go, yeah, we're really good hosts. I don't think they would describe themselves that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it, so much of it comes out of even, it's practice, repetition. You know, we're going to give some attention to the story of Daniel chapter 6.
Mhm.
Him being thrown into the lion's den. And not really a story about lions. It is a story of God's provision, his protection, but really like the focal of this is that, in fact, Daniel seems pretty unimpressed with God's protection. I'm like, what did you expect? Of course I would be here in the morning. I don't know why you didn't sleep well last night, King. But the thing that is pretty remarkable in the story is that Daniel, from being a kid that was recognized as being set apart or different, to then that kid being taken by Nebuchadnezzar into exile, taken away from home, which would wreck everything. It's kind of like like if you imagine somebody who kind of has their life together and goes to college and things get a little chaotic, this was worse. Being taken into exile. And Daniel was consistent in his faithfulness to God, consistent in how he lived his life. And I don't think he thought about it a lot. This is just who he was, this is his being. And of all of the people that were under the king, he rose up to be really one of these top three, and it just made everybody so upset that this guy was, they were jealous of him. And so, and they said, unless we make his following his God against the law, there's no way we can catch him doing anything, he's so. Yeah, stable, consistent.
Yeah.
Faithful, and so he does, they make it so that. This is that they can only worship, anybody in the whole world their world. Can worship only their God for this, or the king for a certain amount of time. And Daniel persists. There is like this recognition, it's very passing in chapter 6, it's like. Daniel didn't wring his hands.
Yeah,
What should I do? Should I continue but quiet? All whatever. There's all these. I'm sure there was thought process in it, but the narrative just goes, and he continued. He persisted, and faced consequences, and God protected him in it. And so, Daniel. This is obviously to give recognition to God, but in the midst of this, Daniel, in his recognition or showing the realities of God. It shows this character trait of being very persistent. And that's the call
yeah,
that Second John really has, watch out that you do not lose what you've worked so hard for, or we've worked so hard for. That we would receive the reward in full. And then verse 9 to, again, anyone who runs ahead, that's the calling for us to continue on in the teachings of Christ. And that is going to take intentionality, and hopefully it takes intentionality to the point where, like you said, Ty, it becomes so natural you don't even necessarily even have to think about every single step of it. And so, I do think like persistence is like cinematic. It's like it's a common element of movie narrative, and I think it, like maybe even in the wrap of this, is to think about, why. You guys thought about why that is such a present thing? Why are movie scripts written
yeah.
with the key attribute of the hero?
I was thinking about this, like, just as we're talking, I was thinking about what, like, it's small, but like thinking the difference between, if there's a difference between being committed and persistence. And I feel like you can see somebody like, they're committed to a job, they're never gonna leave this job, it's what they know, but they're not really giving it their all, like they're there,
Yeah.
they're present, but that's about it. Whereas like persistence, like it feels like it requires some forward motion, like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
coming,
it's
it's
good.
sometimes coming against something tough, or like, like it's, yes, there's a struggle, but we're gonna push through that struggle, not just like let the struggle take me, and like, I don't know, I feel like that's an inspiring story to see that
Yeah.
in movies.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think movies are a lot shorter if there's not conflict, but outside of that, and we see this in biblical narrative, is that there's something to be gleaned or admired from someone who contends with something.
Yeah.
Who wrestles with it. I mean, because a lot of times you'll see like people try to like extrapolate, to the third and fourth level of like, oh, later in Daniel, we don't see Daniel in the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It must meant that he bowed down, but it's that there's this story of that's really trying to just like hone in on this point.
Yeah.
And so like Daniel, the character throughout the rest of the book would lead me to believe that he persisted even in that moment, but that there's a point to it, and in stories framing, that same way that there's something to be learned, there's something to be gained. Wizard of Oz isn't very exciting if by the end the Tin Man hasn't had a chance to show some heart. The Cowardly Lion hasn't already shown courage. That like it was in you all along is like a nice message, but it wasn't actually in them all along. They did start at a place where their characters were scared, they didn't do the job of showing the hearted problems of the Tin Man, but in the book it does a lot better job.
Yeah. I think from two like perspectives, the kind of the pessimistic, not really pessimistic, but like a harsh look at humanity or society. First, and then the other way, but The first one is like, I think people really are drawn to seeing persistence in a character in a movie. Because that way they can have that feeling without having to do the work of being persistent. So that's kind of like, man, we would love it if somebody would persist for me, or think about how my world would be different if I was persistent, except I don't think I can. But, and so I think that can be an attribute of it, but again, I think that the thing that humanity, apart from even like a biblical worldview, is that it's ingrained, created in us, that we see the value of being stable and focused on a greater thing. And so it's here, the author goes, focus on Jesus and persist in that. And that is something created in us, that there is this like, ooh, doing something for the greater good that's hard. Like
Yeah,
release endorphins. And so, yeah, it's interesting to walk in that. And it's also very easy to not be willing to do the work.
I think like that, just going back to First John, or like what you just said, and how these stories and letters connect, like that moment when there was something in First John where he talked about like our conscience, like being uncomfortable doing the greater thing. And when we look to Jesus, let him be your conscience, let him be the one that directs you. And it's like, when we keep our focus on Jesus, because like, I feel like there is a lot of conflict, for me at least, when, like, is this what I'm supposed to do? Or like, I think I should do this, but I'm uncomfortable or whatever. But if I'm looking to Jesus, I feel like I can get a clearer answer. My perspective is different. What I'm thinking about is different. And we are always in persistence and in life, in tough decisions, in uncomfortable moments, when we're like, generosity is stretched, whatever that looks like, and you're keeping your eyes on Jesus, I feel like it helps bring a lot of clarity to all of these things.
So true.
It's your turn, I think, Rich. You have to do the whole thing.
Well, First John,
Fix it.
don't sin, but we know you're gonna sin, so when you sin, know you have an advocate. Right?
Yeah.
Second John. Persist, but we know sometimes you're not gonna persist. But when you don't persist, know you have an advocate. Like, I think that
That's
it's,
good.
when you're created for good works, which. That's what it says, like, there's things to do.
Yeah.
Then we just need to remember we have an advocate even when we stop persisting.
Yeah.
Or feel like we don't want to.
Yep.
I like
Good.
that. I like that we're created for good works.
Mhm.
That's what we're here for.
Well,
Not just, but what?
happy birthday.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
And happy birthday.
And happy birthday. It's so birthday buddies.
See you next week.